Okay, so in the last video, we talked about how one of the limitations is that there really isn't any tracking of how many times you've bought a skill. So you should be able to buy it a finite amount of times. It should be a preset amount. So there's maybe 5 ranks of the skill that you can buy, that kind of thing. And so, there's nothing displaying how many times you've bought it. There's that. 2, there's nothing preventing you from buying it in excess of that limit. So at the end of the last video, in the skill tree script, we added these. So this is the beginning of tracking. And what's going to happen is every time you buy the skill, this will get increased. And eventually we'll put in a check that says, okay, if this number is equal to such and such number, then you cannot increase again. You've hit your limit. And maybe we change the color or do something else to indicate that it's maxed out. Maybe put a little particle system glowing around it. And what's going to make it more complicated is that usually as you buy more levels of a skill, it becomes more expensive. So right now, what we do is we really don't have anything like that. We have a constant. Number 1 is always number 1. 0 is always 0. So we're looking for these constants, when in fact what we need to do is we need to have a variable, and that variable would change its value. So for instance, this, when you click on that, we'd add a new variable. That variable would be increased when you click on this button, and that variable would be here. So you increase the variable, therefore changing the condition for further purchases. So I'm just trying to give you a summary. Don't worry about that. We're going to get into that one step at a time. I just kind of want to give you an overview that is about to get a little bit more challenging. That where we have constants, we're going to have to keep variables, which means we need to modify those variables. Okay, so what are we going to do to begin with? Well, we're going to do something. We're going to actually overtly do something differently than what we did at the beginning. So I created a new icon. We're going to create a button. So game object, UI, button. And let's just check the settings. This was 80 by 80. So we need to change the settings. So 80 by 80 will drop in. Oops, actually that image won't work. What I said at the beginning of the very first video, when you import an image, a 2D image, it imports as a texture. So if I tried using this right now, it wouldn't work. So we have to click on this, change it to Sprite, and apply. So we'll click on button again, drag and drop this to where it says source image, and there we go. We have a new icon. So let's slide this over and down. So let's see what Y coordinate this was at. Negative 272. We'll just use that. Negative 272. So this is going to be, oops. There we go. So this is going to be like a tier 1 skill. Now, as you recall, I mentioned that there is a text object attached to this. I said, delete it. We don't need it. Well, to have say we want a number to appear in the lower right corner, then we need that. So how do we do this? Well, when you have the text object selected, what you have to do is here, see how it says paragraph? We have to move the alignment. So we want it over to the right, and it's hard to see, but there are letters there, and we need to move it down. Now you can definitely see that it says button. So in the previous videos I said get rid of it, you don't need it. But in this case where the request is to have additional indications of what level you're on, then we do need it. And then you would just change this to say a 0. And we either can move the text object yourself or we can change the alignment. It's just easy enough to just nudge this over, really. And we don't want it to be too big, we don't want to dominate the image too much, but we do want it a little bigger than that so it's actually visible. Okay. So Quick summary, we changed what we did in the first videos and that we do not delete the text object that is created automatically with the button. And then we just changed the alignment so it's in the lower right corner. Now let's go ahead and rename this. We'll call this, say, BOM ABIL, short for ability. Now what we're going to do is we need to do the similar kind of attachment where the skill GM needs to be aware and the skill GM needs to be aware of the button and the button needs to be able to refer back to the skill GM. So let's take a look. So skill tree, which is attached to skill GM, as I said, we need skill GM to be aware of the button. There's that button, there's that button, there's that button. So we're going to add another button. And like I said, if you want to line the buttons up, it's okay. It really doesn't make a difference, the order up here. So public button, and we'll call this BOM ATT for bomb attack. Save this. And where the script is here, bomb attack. So take that new bomb, put it there. So far, so good. Now we need a function in here to click on the bomb button, because when you click on the bomb button, it doesn't have a reference to a function yet. So public void bomb, and now we'll change this to skill, because I said you want to be careful about using the exact same word over and over again, because you want to make sure you can distinguish between them. So we'll call this bomb skill. And we want a few things to happen. So first of all, we're going to create a new static variable. Actually, I'll just put it with this one. We'll be a little bit consistent. So public static int bomb skill level. So we'll keep that naming convention the same, and it starts off as 0. So we need that to be set to 1 at very least. So bomb skill level plus equals 1. Total skill points, whatever you think it should cost, minus equals 1. Total spent SP plus equals 1. So remember, these two need to match, because this is the SP being minused from your pool, and this is being added to the cum that's collectively looking at the total amount you've spent. So I'm not doing this from memory, I'm just looking at these and mirroring it. You can put in the debug if you want. Yeah, we'll do that just to make sure it's working. But we'll put in bomb skill level instead. So bomb skill level. Oops, sorry, I forgot the semicolon there. And okay, now if you notice, we added the melee level and we added the bomb skill level. So this doesn't actually correspond to this, because this is a modifier. There really isn't a modifier here. This is just, can you use the skill? If so, which level? So this is going from 0 to 1 is on or off. Whereas this, your hero attack power would be 1.0. here your bomb skill level is 0, and you just put a check that says bomb skill level is 0, therefore you can't use this button. Whatever button the skill is mapped to won't do anything because you do not have that skill yet. So this is really pulling double duty. This is letting you know what skill level you have, but it's also letting you know whether or not you have it. Because if it's 0, then you don't have access to that skill. And like I said, whatever button is meant to trigger that skill won't work. Okay, so let's save this and test it. So we go to that bomb ability button. We come down here to click. We add. And we'll just drag and drop skill GM. Functions become available. The function is defined within the skill tree script. And bomb skill right there. So that should make this clickable now. Just keep in mind that the modifications we did to these won't work yet, because these we actually went in and changed the color and that kind of thing. So what you could do is when you're first creating this, you could create one button, do all the color changes, and then copy it like 7, 8, 10 times, whatever. However many skill buttons you're going to have, 10, 15, 20. That way you don't have to go in and manually do these all over again. All right, so we're going to run it. We click down here, and we're going to click on it, and there we should see the skill appear. 1, so it did. So that means we need this to change. So that's the next thing that has to be changed. So what we need is we need skill GM to be aware of text. Why? Because this is the actual click. This is what happens when you click. And therefore, we need this to change when you click. So that's the underlying logic. And sorry if this is kind of small. Let me zoom in a little bit. Now, we're going to just create another variable. So public. And it's going to be, I think we can just do I think we should do a transform. Can we do a public text? And it's public text, and we'll call it bomb txt. There we go. So let's go back to skill GM, bomb text. Put the text there. And now what are we going to do? Now that text will get modified. So again, here's the bomb skill click functionality. In bomb, see, and this is where it really demonstrates why you need naming conventions. Because you can see that each one of these are distinct. They're not so close as they can get confused. Like, okay, that's the bomb text, that's the level of the skill, that's the variable, so on and so forth. Or I shouldn't say, well, it's a variable. They're all variables. What I meant to say, it was the variable for the button. So, bomb text dot get component text equals, and it's going to be set to the bomb skill level. So that's the only functionality we added now. Since the last time we ran it, we created the linkage or awareness between skill GM and the text via a variable, and then we're now modifying that. Okay, I made an error, and this is an important one. It'd be easy enough to edit this out, but it's a teachable moment. Cannot implicitly convert type int to string. This is an int. It's an integer because that's what we declared it as up here. Okay. This is a string because it's text, and they're saying you can't implicitly convert it. In other words, implicitly means I didn't state it, but the way that I stated it would suggest that I want it to. So in other words, you have to explicitly change it, and you just do that by doing toString, just like that. So you might see that error a lot when you're putting a number into a text. That's all you have to do. Again, teachable moment. I forgot to do that myself, so we got to see it. So now, this here should match that there when we click on it. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. So now you have an indication of how many times you've clicked on this. So I think we'll do one more step and then conclude this video because I don't want to give you too much at once. I want to give you a chance to digest this. Because now it's going to start getting messy because now we want limitations. So the way it works is that button is enabled by default, because when you create a button, unless you explicitly say it's disabled, it's enabled. Okay, so we haven't done anything to disable it. Here's the update section, and here's where we're messing with the buttons. So if we don't have enough points, melee is disabled. If we do have enough points, melee is enabled. Again, for max HP, so we don't have anything in here for the disabling of that button. Well, I'm not going to worry too much about the disabling at the moment. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to look at putting a cap, because now we want to say that you can't click on it if you've already bought the maximum level. So first, let's bump total points up to make sure we have enough to do this. I think we do, but total points, bump that up to 7, but I think 5 was enough. So, if and this is where it gets different, because now we're actually going to look at one of those variables that have been changed. Up to this point, we only looked at the total skill points. Now we're going to look at a skill-specific variable. And that's an important distinction. That's really the big thing that we started to do at the end of last video and through this one, is we're starting to add the skill-specific variables. And you can start seeing why save files are so enormous, because look how many variables we have, and it's for a minor UI element. This isn't even the game itself. This is just what skills do you have. So you're going to wind up having thousands and thousands of variables, possibly even more at any given time, depending how enemies are there on the screen and things like that. Okay, so if bomb skill level equals, actually let's do is less than 5, trying to think, because, or if I said this is going to be the disabling, so let's do equals. So if bomb skill level is equal to 5, then we're going to disable. And we said disable is by doing this, the interactable. The statements are interchangeable. So that button is, so it's just bomb attack is the button. That's the one thing that I should have done differently, is the naming of the buttons. I should have done a better job with the naming convention. That's the only one that I specifically flagged as a button. So lesson learned, like I said, come up with a naming convention. So, I mean, I could fix it now, but then I'd have to change every instance in the code. So you want to make sure you come up with a good name to begin with. So bomb attack. Oops, didn't need the extra dot. So bomb attack is going to become, well, we're going to put a false setting for interactable. So it'll stop being interactable. So that should do it. So if this has been increased to 5, which happens here, when does this happen? When you click on the bomb button. So we got the connectivity. We click on the bomb, the variable goes by 1. When that variable reaches 5, then it cannot be clicked on anymore. Ready? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see, disabled. So in a future video, we may modify how we disable this, but for now, it's an iterative process, and that you now have displayed at the level of the skill, and that you can't keep buying past that level. But for now, we'll add the color and the highlight just to catch it up to speed. So what we did for the color was in the function for the melee increase, we changed the button to that color. So we'll do the same thing here. And this was, I believe, it was bomb attack. And I just copy and paste it for 2 reasons. A, as I've said before, I'm lazy. B, to iterate that it's not a new idea. We're just applying this idea here. And that's really what you need to do to get good at programming. You need to understand when you're really, this wasn't a one-off. You now have functionality that you can repeat again and again and again. So we'll save that. And the other change is done in the inspector, where we said the highlighted color was 255, 213, and 101. I don't think, actually we can copy the color. And so we click on the bomb, and that was highlighted color. Good. I actually never did that before. I usually just memorized it. So that should catch it up as far as highlight color and change color. But like I said, we might decide that we don't like the fact that it goes transparent like that, because that's just using the same interactable faults, so it's going to affect it the same way, but at least it's green now, so we might keep it like that. And something else that we might want to do is that when you point at the skill, you may want to get a tooltip, a pop-up that says what this does. So this series actually might be a couple videos longer than I was thinking, because I hadn't thought of that until just now. So we'll probably add that in a later video. So we're getting close. So we can now display what level of a skill you have. We can lock out any further purchases once you've hit the cap. And so we'll probably apply this principle to this. But the one thing that we didn't do in this, and I'll save that to the next video because this video is getting long now, is, again, it's just total skill points. It is a set value. So what we're going to do, it's rather than having a constant, we're going to pop a variable in there. And each skill is going to have its own variable saying, okay, so first it costs 2, then it costs 3, and then it costs 5. Whatever the amount of points is. But like I said, this video is already run kind of long, so we'll do that in the next one, and that should wrap up this one.